Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Hey, man, this is great, man. This is you've done 82 episodes?
82 episodes. This is 83.
That's amazing. I'm at 126. And I'm doing so many other people's shows that my team can't catch up. So I'm only doing like one episode a month now.
Wow.
Because my editing team can't catch up to all the content we give. Because I do 5 episodes a week now, 5 interviews for other people a week now.
Yeah, you have to find slots to actually like media slots to put it in.
Yes,
like, even if your production engine is that strong, you still
Yeah.
gotta like fit it in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to the point, this is good. It's a good problem to have, but I had to slow down on all the content I was creating because my team couldn't catch up.
So why are you so on fire? Like, what's got you going on all these podcasts?
Everybody has a superpower. Have you read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller?
Haven't read the book now, unfortunately.
Highly recommend it. It's one of my top 3 books I recommend for anybody. And it's the boring answer people don't like. You get really, really good at one thing. It was Ty Lopez who actually recommended it to me. You get really elite at one thing. And when you get elite at that one thing, like I'm sure Tony Hawk thought about doing other things, but he got elite at skateboarding, right? You get elite at this one problem you can solve or this one thing you can do. For me, I can just talk forever. That's why Ty Lopez and I are friends. I can just fucking talk forever. And I'm really good at loading people up and getting them to talk about what they're interested in. Like if you've seen sometimes when Dan's a great example. When Dan will start at like a 2 or a 3 when we're having conversations, but you've seen him when he gets to a 10. When Bilzerian gets to a 10 and he starts telling stories, he's on fire and everyone stops what they're doing and everyone's listening. But there's a way to get Dan to a 10. I've listened, like there's certain questions you ask him and he just starts going. And that's a skill set. If you watch Joe Rogan, he's really good at doing that. If you watch Huberman's good at that. Lex Friedman is fantastic at that. Some guys are really good at that. And it's just one of these things where I do this thing that makes my company money and it gives me energy. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And then every other thing, another great book I recommend is called Buying Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Literally
started it yesterday.
Yes.
And I'm blowing through it, by the way.
Phenomenal, right? You can't believe how good that book. It's so great. I'm reading Buy Back Your Time and I'm like replacing every single thing in my life that doesn't give me energy and doesn't build the business. So for me, making content, I was checking somewhere, I do on a bad week, maybe 11 hours of content per week. And on a normal week, it's somewhere between 16 and 19 hours a week. The only people who I think do more than me are the streamers. So it's going to be like maybe Destiny doing a fucking 18-hour stream, or he sits on screen for 11 hours, or when Fresh and Fit was doing 6 shows a week. Those are the only guys I think that were doing more than me. If you counted my 3-hour coaching calls twice a week and then all my one-on-ones. And it was just something where at the end of it, I actually felt energized. Like I don't lose steam from talking and helping other people a lot. And there's a few people that are we'll use Ty as an example. Ty, when you go to his house and he has like 4 hours to kill, he has nothing planned. You know that? He'll go on people's podcasts and he'll talk for 4 hours and he has not a single note written down. He'll just go. And that's a skill set, right? And it's something that you learn after a while. So I think for me, when you consider, right, there's a cost to everything you do, right? There's you have to buy your cameras. You have to fly to a certain place to make content. There's a cost of electricity, all this kind of stuff. You want to write code for your sales funnel. You have to film your VSL. You have to write your copy. There's certain things that are costs that are in your company. For our company, for me to make content, costs us $0. So I just do as much of it as I can.
Because it's a resource that regenerates.
Correct. It's a resource that regenerates. And each clip is a money in the bank that over time it generates more revenue. Does that make sense? It generates more interest. There's more likes for each one. And some clip you posted before that didn't do well, you repost and for some reason it goes viral the second time you post it 6 months later and it makes no sense. And you're A/B testing each post against each other. And then you start to see, okay, this is the narrative people want. You have to be careful though. You can't go too far into the narrative that people want. Otherwise it's like, the earth is flat. We faked the moon landings. Kennedy was killed by aliens. Like you can go too far in that direction. But like you want to, there's this part where it's like, you want to help people as much as you can, but you also need to entertain them or rather engage them so that they continue to want to stay with you. So for me, I talk about probably 70 different topics, but the intersexual dynamics one is by far the one people want to hear me talk about the most, right? When I talk about, the military arsenal of Ukraine and Russia, people just don't care that much. And I'm a retired U.S. military officer. I worked in counterintelligence. I actually know what I'm talking about. People don't care that much when I talk about that. When I talk about women with a higher body count are more likely to cheat on you, explosion, millions of views, I'm called a misogynist, cancel on half the platforms. So it's like one of these things where you kind of got to find this middle ground. When I talk about, like you said, The One Thing by Gary Keller or Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, just snore. Nobody cares. The stripper getting off at the Rhino at 6 a.m. doesn't give a fuck about any of this. The super rich entrepreneur, he kind of cares, but whatever. He doesn't, he doesn't, the Lambo bros, the crypto bros don't give a shit about this. But when I talk about the concept of hypergamy or assortative mating, or the fact that, men throughout history, about 40% of men have reproduced and 80% of women, and women are more picky. Explosion. Everyone wants to talk about it. It's like these huge things. So you kind of have to figure out what you do that makes you popular, and then you sell them what they want, and then you teach them what they need. So that's pretty much been my motivation, and helping people is the ultimate motivation.
Yeah, I mean, you've helped thousands of guys at this point with MOA, and we'll get to talking about that. But one thing I find fascinating about you is you're a very eloquent storyteller, and you put a lot of conviction into it. How do you think you developed that? I know that these different phases of your life, like being a gentleman's club manager to being a pilot in the Air Force, these are like, they all were formative to you. But what really gave you like that articulate storytelling ability? It's not just speaking, it's the two of them in tandem.
So I was actually a navigator in the Air Force, and I would tell stories while we were up in the, so I flew a KC-135. That is, I was a navigator in KC-135.
What is that?
It's a air refueler. So it's a Boeing 707, except you take out the entire cargo compartment and you put a 200,000 pound fuel bladder in there, meaning it'll hold 200,000 pounds of JP8. And then there's a boom that comes out of the back, and you give gas to other airplanes that are flying in contact. So this is mostly F-15s, F-16s, AC-130. AC-130 is probably the most common one, or an MC-130. Those are the most common things we'd give gasoline to. Can't do, helicopters. Obviously, we're going too fast, but we would do stuff like that, right? C-130s, sometimes we would refuel them while they were in the air. And I think part of it, there's a couple things that happen. When you're in the military, you're going to meet some great storytellers. Every unit has some crotchety old NCO who's seen everything and is really great at telling stories. I think the military, there's a tradition that's been passed down of storytellers in general. And some of the best stories you ever hear is like, oh, back in Nam, we did. Those are great storytellers. That's what they are, right? And some of those stories, they turn into Band of Brothers, right? Books like that, or Generation Kill, or like incredible movies. What are they? That we're just passing down generational stories. Before I was a manager at a strip club, I was the DJ at a strip club. And for that, I have to talk on the microphone for 8 hours with the distraction of naked women around all the time, right? When you do that, it's kind of like being a quarterback and you're getting engage 8 blitz every single time, but you get used to delivering the football accurately. I just was so used to that pressure of speaking in public for 8 hours a day that I just got to the point where I was able to do it and not feel uncomfortable coming up with the new subjects or consistently using verbal crutches. Hey man, I got better at not using those after practicing over time. So the answer is just practice. It's just a lot of practice. And then finally, I think empathy for other people. When you have empathy for other people and you can tell a story, I think that is, or have a narrative. Casey Zander is great at this. I'm interviewing him on Saturday. Nice. Casey Zander is such a great example of a guy who tells a story and has a narrative. Rather is what one of my issues is. I try to revert all the things I say back to a study or some scientific hypothesis that has some PhD behind it. Casey Zander, on the other hand, he's really good at telling a story about Bob, who got cheated on by Sarah because Bob was a bitch, right? You understand? And that's another effective way of communicating. Mm-hmm. And I watch all these different ways, but great storytellers, those are the richest men in the world. Great storytellers are the best salespeople that have ever lived. Great storytellers are the best writers in the world. When you think about it, what makes us different from other mammals, right? Have you ever read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari? It's a great book. He talks about the difference between humans and chimpanzees is that I can put an American flag on me and another guy, and we know we're going to war for our country. And what the United States of America means something to us when we go to war for it. I remember my first deployment to Iraq. I remember what it meant to my family and my friends back home when I deployed, because the US of A it's a construct in our mind, but the US of A doesn't exist if there are no humans on the planet. The border between the US and Canada is just something we make up. We imagine that is there, right? That's a story we tell ourselves. But if I were to tell a chimpanzee, hey, if you go to war with these other chimpanzees, you're going to go to heaven and you're going to get 72 chimpanzee virgins. The chimp is like, what? Like, chimpanzees cannot tell stories. And that was the ultimate thing that changes us from other mammals, is our ability to tell stories and pass along tradition. That and the ability to throw objects overhand and opposable thumbs. That's the reason why we are the apex predator on the planet, is we're able to say, and when we pass along the stories, it's like, hey son, when you go to the watering hole in the spring, the lions and tigers are there. Be careful. Don't go then. Mm-hmm. Go around nightfall when they're hungry, they're full, and then you can go kill a gazelle, whatever. We pass along those stories over time. And because we are able to do that, great storytellers like comedians, another great example, comedians will go up there and they'll tell it, you'll be enthralled in listening, and then you'll laugh. And you're laughing because there's an element of truth in it and a piece of wisdom passed down. Dave Chappelle's the best of this. We laugh, and he makes us feel uncomfortable for laughing at his joke about the mentally disabled person or the trans person. We're like, whoa, wait, I'm not supposed to laugh at that. There's this like a little kernel of truth. And he's so good at telling the story that we just get sucked into it. So it's such an incredible story, such an incredible skill set to have. And then, of course, in dating with women, if you're a guy who can tell stories, like, you're going to have no trouble with women. If you ever wonder how the 5'4" guy who's not that good looking gets the super hot girl, he's a great storyteller. That's what it is. That's the thing that can overcome so much. He's charismatic. And he's also going to have a lot of cool friends. He's going to be well networked. He's going to have a ton of access because he's such a great storyteller. He's the person people want in the middle of the table at the dinner parties. He's the person everybody wants to invite to their house for a party or whatever. And so that's what happens.
That's something that Dan Bilzerian talks about all the time, is your ability to tell stories. Like, that's one of the things he coaches guys on. And it's like, who even ever thought about that as something like a primary focus of a man should be actually understanding your good stories and reciting them and practicing them. That's advice he gave.
So now think about this, telling a story as opposed to what most men do, which is bragging about themselves. If I tell a story about a cool thing that happened, I can throw little humble brags in there, but I don't have to deliberately brag about myself. There was one study that was done, it was speed dating in the United Kingdom, and they transcribed thousands of these speed dates, and they were looking for like a word correlation that led to a second date. And the number one correlation was when women said me or I multiple times, not when men did. So the trick is, men tell stories, men talk about things, women talk about themselves. We talk about things, women talk about themselves. I might tell a story about how the four moons of the four major moons of Jupiter are Ganymede, Io, Callisto, and Europa, and those were the lovers of Jupiter, right, in real life. And so a girl might listen to that and be like, oh, that's an amazing story, but I'm not talking about, hey, by the way, I have a fucking minor in astrophysics. That's brag. Do you see it? That's kind of a brag. That stuff like that might be another thing is,
which I want to talk about today. So I'm not going to let you off this damn show until we talk about astronomy. But
yes, for sure, yeah, we can definitely talk about astronomy. But so, like when you have that realization, like what kind of story? In fact, that's how I met my girlfriend. We were leaving a bar in Mexico. She was a contestant at a bikini competition where I was the host, and we walked outside. And I said, "Hey, there's Jupiter." And for me, I always look up and I could see Jupiter and Mars very quickly. If you study astronomy, it's very easy to pick out Jupiter. And in fact, there's nothing easier to pick out than Jupiter. And I look up and she looks at her friend like I'm a fucking moron. Like, what is this? And we take out the app and sure enough, it's Jupiter. And she's like, what? Like, how did you know? For her from Southwest Arkansas, that was like a voodoo magic that I was able to pick out Jupiter, in the sky. But in reality, it's very easy to see, pick out Jupiter. You just look in the southern hemisphere of the sky and you see the biggest, brightest thing there. But, it's just one of these things where you're able to tell a story. So remember, I talk about another one of my stories is one time I was asleep on the floor of the cockpit in the KC-135 and we were flying over Afghanistan, and we got a radio call and I had my headphones on, but I was like half asleep. I stood up to go hit the button to answer, and the panel came off and hit me in the forehead and I'm bleeding out of my head. Now the pilot and co-pilot can't see me because I'm behind them. And I'm bleeding out of my head, and I'm talking to the AC-130 navigator and like trying to get the coordinates to come. Anyway, well, I tell that story. But the thing is, what does that mean? I was a U.S. military officer. I was a captain in the Air Force. I flew over Afghanistan. There's these little subtle things you can put in there without bragging. That's how great storytelling can help you.
I love this thought track, this thought experiment that you're taking me on. And there's a lot of tech founders who listen to my show, which honestly, that's like female repellent, because they're all, here's how to do this.
Yes.
Here's my technical knowledge. Here's my accomplishments.
You're solving the problem. Yes.
So talk to the founders who want to demonstrate their expertise and intelligence, but like what should they be thinking in terms of what kind of content I should be creating for my brand and my company?
So there are interesting stories, and no matter what you deal with. So for instance, if you're let's just pick some kind of industry. Let's just say somebody works in, he writes software, and the software is for tax preparation. Okay. Something that
boring shit in the world.
Let's go as boring as we can go. Just, you hear the drying up sound of all the women right there, right? When they hear the tax preparation software. But here's the thing. The tax preparation guy, if he goes on his content, what about the guy who tried to write off the boob job? What about the guy who tried to write off the cocaine he bought one time when he was in Mexico? What about the crazy story about the guy who tried to write off his OnlyFans? What about you understand what I'm saying? What about the crazy write-off? What about the OnlyFans model who never paid any taxes? What about the guy who tried to go to another country to like never pay? What about those stories? Those are interesting stories that you can tell that get the average person to sit there and listen. The craziness. You know, remember Stephen Lau credit? Have you seen some of his content? Just look up credit on Instagram. Stephen Lau, he does credit repair. He sells a credit repair course. If you look at his Instagram, he's got blowtorches and he's got porn stars and he's sticking like credit cards in their mouth. And it's nothing like what you think, but
credit repair.
Yeah, but it's credit repair. But the reason why it works is people who need credit repair tend to have a problem with like instant gratification. And so he shows, like if you were for sure, if you wanted to sell a credit repair program, what you should do is find someone who has like a sports betting course or like sell sports betting picks. And then if you were to get his entire email list and sell credit repair to those people, you would find an incredibly high correlation because they have people who just don't know how to delay gratification. You'd also find like Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. You'd find that if you had this email list of all these people who bought sports picks, you're going to find people who just have a hard time dealing with their own personal vices. So it's one of these situations where like some people are able to tell stories. So now let's go back to this guy. He's selling tax software. He goes on his show and he starts talking about this guy went to jail for 15 years because he did this. Do you understand? And he didn't report this income. Or did you know how the United States government finally caught Al Capone? You remember, it was tax fraud, right? That's what I would do. I would relate it to I would take the most unsexy thing there is, which is accounting. Love accountants out there. My accountant, she's awesome. I would take them and I would ask her questions. Like one of the best books is The Millionaire Next Door. Have you ever read that? Mm-hmm. That book goes over the wealthiest people in the world, but who wrote it? It was an accountant. An accountant saw which one of his clients was actually wealthy and which one of his clients pretended to be wealthy. He looked at the spending habits of his moderately wealthy clients and he saw that these people became broke. He looked at his wealthiest clients and he saw things like their wives were more stingy. He was able to see these things. That book is a book written by an accountant, but it's incredibly fascinating because it talks about how wealth is actually created. Ty Lopez comes, he always says this. He goes, whenever a guy comes to you and says whatever his company's revenue it is, cut it in half. Whenever a woman comes to you and tells you what her body count is, double it. Right? It's the same kind of situation. If you're an accountant, there's no half your revenue or whatever. An accountant can actually tell how much people make. The accountant pierces he pierces the veil, the veil of the LLC, and he can see this guy really did make $1 million a month. He's not bullshitting on a podcast. That really happened. And so from that, you can say, you can't, obviously there's an accountant, there's a client privilege with your client account privilege.
Yeah, but they can talk about it.
But they can talk about it in general. In general, what I've seen is that people in this field make the most money. And one of the things he said is people who start their own business, like you or I, will start our own business. We're the ones who actually generally do the best. And then it's okay, well, how do you protect yourself from taxation? It's like, dude, are you tired of the IRS taking 36% of your check? First off, I don't know how many of you people live in California. Like, yeah, the idea,
they just proposed a 46%.
Bro, the amount of money I paid in taxes this year, the supercars I could have bought with that, and the fact that you guys pay 13% more than me here, I live in Nevada. That is crazy to me. But anyway, so when you consider those concepts of like how much money you pay in taxes, okay, now a guy who's wealthy is like, yeah, I feel oppressed by the tax code. He's right. He goes, have you considered depreciation by buying real estate? And everybody's like, well, yeah, I've heard that before. Do you know what the best depreciation to buy in real estate is? RV homes.
Really?
Justin Waller. You know Justin Waller?
Yeah.
He buys RV homes because their depreciation is massive. He'll pay nothing in taxes because of the depreciation he gets to write off. Isn't that good? What a crazy idea.
RVs.
Now, but hold on. I've taken accounting and I've made it interesting. See what I'm saying? I figured out the way for this rich guy to pay to get rid of his tax liability. Dude, I'm here. People consider me a dating coach, and I was just sitting there talking about tax liability. Why is that? Because I'm talking about things that are interesting, and because I know how to get to the human aspect of things. understanding like what is most important to people. They want to protect their family. Most men are looking for higher status and higher sexual selection. Same thing with women. They want to protect, their kind. They want some level of security. Most people want money and some level of like love from their family members and some level of acceptance from people that they look up to. These are very basic things. And if you understand those concepts, what the people's primary driver emotions are, and you just tell stories that hit those buttons, then all of it works fine. A great example is, you remember Maury Povich, where they would have the whole, you are the father or you are not the father. Why is it that we watched that trashy ass shit and watched it for 30 years?
Yeah, and highbrow people, high IQ people.
High IQ people would watch it because the ultimate fear of the Homo sapien male is what? Cuckoldry. To raise paternity uncertainty. It's the reason why men are far less forgiving of women cheating than men. When men cheat, women are like, well, I know the baby's still mine. Women don't have a problem of paternity uncertainty because they know if a baby comes out of them, it's their baby. Men do. So that's why when women cheat, it's way more deleterious. And also you see women far more likely to leave a relationship when she cheats. Men will cheat and not want to leave the relationship. In fact, one study showed that men who cheated and men who didn't cheat showed the same level of satisfaction in a marriage, which is a crazy statistic. When you think about that, men who cheat and men who don't cheat said that they said they were just as happy in a marriage. For women, it was like something like 79% of the time women were less happy if they were cheating, right? And so, when you come to that realization, and you see that, man, what a like the whole Homo sapien experience becomes very, very visceral. You start to see how different things work. I forgot what we were talking about just a second ago.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask about, because I think one thing you tap into really effectively is these like very fundamental human emotions.
Yes, that's what it was.
Because like in storytelling and also like I think a lot of people don't think about like when they're trying to create content for their brand, they're not thinking about, should I make this entertaining? They're thinking about, can I make this valuable? But like
because we're men.
The equation is like an 80-20.
Yeah.
So talk to me about it.
So because men, so if you remember notice, so let's say it's you, me, Lynn, Dan, let's say Weston Corica, Brandon McElroy's there. Let's say Kevin Pern, the guys from V Shreds, Nick Daniels, we're all there. When we have a discussion, listen to how the discussion, were you there when I was talking to Michael Savage that one time in Dan's
downstairs?
Yeah, downstairs.
Yeah.
When you go back and think about all the discussions we have, they all relate. None of us were really bragging. They all relate to us solving each other's problems. Mm-hmm. Nothing could be more.
That's what like raises the energy in the room. Correct. It's like, oh my God, I just had a breakthrough because of what you just said.
And nothing in the world could be less appetizing to women. None of us sat there and listened. Man, I just feel like a victim. Oh, it's okay. It's okay, Jonathan, that you feel like a victim. We're here for you. A lot of
people feel that way.
I'm just here to listen to you, blah, blah, blah. I've never seen anything like it when I used to manage a strip club, watching a woman who had been beaten by her husband shows up with a black eye and all the other girls are like sitting there supporting her and she comes back next week with another black eye. I'm like, hey, I got a better idea. Let's solve her fucking problem instead of doing this. Like either me and the uncles need to go over there and beat the shit out of this dude, or you need to help her get out of that house instead of telling her how we're here for you and we want to listen. When I love someone, I solve problems for them. It was when Dan came out with the setup, I made a podcast with CJ Sparks and I talked about, hey, how are you excited about Dan's new book? And she's like, yeah, because we're in the book. Not specifically, but I'm at several of the parties that he mentions in the book. Several of the whole story about the Sam Majid and the sharks that he put in his house. I was there. Or the day right after that. Yeah. I was there. The
saltwater sharks in the swimming pool.
3 of the Ignite parties I was there. The whole situation, like several of the photos. Dan Fleischman is a friend of mine. I actually know Sophia Beverly, like the girls he mentions, Lauren Blake and Jessica Hinton. I know all of them. So a lot of the book. So I said in my podcast, I was like, man, I can't wait for Dan's book to come out. Cause it's like, I think his book is a encapsulation of from like say 2010 to like 2019, these Instagram EDM club bottle popping years. Dan is like encapsulated that in this thing because he's sort of the figurehead of that whole movement that happened. Right. And so I was like super excited to read. So Dan saw, I tagged Dan in the video and Dan, wrote me back. He goes like, my man, like, and he sends me a book. Like he has his assistant drop off a book at my place at Panorama Towers. The funny thing is I live maybe 10 floors below where Dan used to live when he lived in Panorama Towers right now. Mm-hmm. And in the same tower. And so I read the book and I get through the book and I believe I got through it before anyone else. I think I'm the first non-editor to finish the book. And then I have Dan come on my podcast and I was like, Dan is my friend. So like, what can I do? At the time I had 18,000 subs. Right now I have about 180,000. But like at the time I had 18,000 subscribers. What can I do to help my friend Dan with my little group of subscribers. By the way, the video's got 200,000 views. I'll stand by it. It's the greatest interview anyone's ever done of Dan Bilzerian. I will stand by that.
Go watch it.
Go watch it. I have the best interview anyone has ever done of Rollo Tomasi, the best anyone's ever done of Adam Sosnick, the best anyone's ever done of Justin Waller, the best anyone's ever done of Dan Bilzerian, the best anyone's ever done of Ty Lopez, and I think the best anyone's ever done of David Buss. And I mean the longest and most thorough interviews anyone has ever done with those people, because I did like 20 hours of research, and Dan, I did more than 20 hours. And when we did it, I was like, I want to help Dan sell this book. The book is right there when we're talking about it, and I'm relating stories in the book. Do you remember the book? Would you have a favorite story from the book?
I mean, dude, there's so many good stories in the book.
The one with the midget smoking when he's fucking two girls in the bathroom. There's no better story than that one. And the midget like tells Dan to go fuck himself, and then Dan kicks him. There's no better story than that one. That one and him stuffing steroids up his butthole to like cross the Mexican border. Those are the best stories.
Yeah, also the heart attack.
Okay, the heart attack's amazing too, right? There's so many great stories. Yeah, the multiple heart attacks. Yeah. My favorite thing is, the photo of him with the 9 girls in the bathtub. Have you ever seen that? So there's a photo. He had to take it down, but during one of his parties, he was naked with 9 girls in his bathtub at the house on 10979 Shalon Road. That house. When he's in the bathroom, he comes to me afterwards. He goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, I didn't fuck all 9 of those girls. I only fucked 6 of them." He goes. I don't want to brag and lie. I only fucked 6 of those girls.
Humility.
It's the most Dan thing I've ever heard in my life. He goes, "I only fucked 6 of them. I didn't fuck all 9 of them." Anyway, so again, what a great storyteller. But in that thing, I wanted, just like you did too, when you were all pulling in the same direction. We were all having those meetings because we want to help solve problems for Dan, and by proxy each other. Even right now, Weston Corica is helping me with a low ticket offer that I'm doing. I ask Lynn Oding for advice on stuff all the time. All these guys, we're asking each other for advice, and I would never consider charging anyone for any of this shit. I want, you guys are my friends. Like, I just want you guys to like get as far along as you can. And as soon as Dan's course came out, remember, my course deals a little bit with intersexual dynamics. Dan's course is all about dating. The first thing I did the day his course came out is I sold it to all of my clients. I was like, dude, you guys got to check out Dan's course. It's fucking awesome.
Within moments, there was like $20,000 in sales.
Yes, exactly. Like that, because I wanted to help, because that's how I see my friends. Same with Ty Lopez. When Ty, remember, he hadn't done a podcast in forever. If you guys go back, Ty is off the air for a long time. The first podcast he does when he comes back is mine. Yeah. And it got 900,000 views. If you go back and watch. And the thing with the Ty Lopez thing is because I had known Ty for 10 years, I went back and I started asking him questions. Same thing with Mystery. Eric von Markovic, I'd known Mystery for 16 years. And I went back and I asked them questions that no one had ever asked them before. But it's not because I'm trying to like showboat. It's because I want to help them solve a problem, which is helping other people learn more about them. And my skill set is getting the best out of them through my interview process. Makes sense? Same thing with Neil Patel, same thing with Dan Fleischman, same thing with Ryan Stewman, same thing with Ryan Pineda, same thing with Brad Lee.
So I wanted to ask you about that. Like, for guys who...
Hey, check this out. Look what I did here.
What are the muscles are too big for this damn studio. Yeah, I think you've done a great job. Like, I know that Men of Action includes expertise around networking, but you're like the fucking master. So my first encounter with Michael Sartain was I show up to Babes in Toyland. This is this big Babes, just like tons of Playboy models and beautiful models, like production, right? I showed up with the Playmate as my date. And I was like feeling like a hot shot. I like strut in, and then I turn and I see Michael Sartain literally with like 12 females around him. He's in a suit looking super sharp and all these women on the red carpet. I'm just like, damn, I just felt like small fries over here, dude. And I was just like, wow, whoever this motherfucker is, like, he knows what he's doing. So I don't know. That was years ago. Me and you didn't even connect that night, but I saw your social skills at work, and I was just like, Jesus, dude, anybody can talk shit about this guy because they're jealous, but like he clearly knows what he's doing. And that's what I was thinking in my mind. And so I think one of your most incredible skill sets is your ability to make friends.
Yeah.
And I don't even like the word networking because it's like an exchange. You didn't know how to make good friends. So like, what do you tell somebody who wants to expand their circle?
I think if you were to talk to Dan Fleischman, the two words are not that dissimilar. Dan and I have a friendship based on solving problems for one another. And I love it. I love that way. The most extreme example is Justin Waller. He says, if we can't make money together, fuck you. I don't want to be friends. Right. I don't believe that. I have friends that I go back that are from high school, and I don't feel I love them, and we don't make money together. Right. But that kind of mentality, what you're going to find is that if you are the person who's always solving problems, always connecting people, always having great suggestions on where to eat, what to read, things like that, and then consistently doing things for other people and asking for nothing in return. I never ask Ty for any. Ty asked me to come on his podcast. Like, what a huge honor for me.
You've helped us out so many times on Sigma Society.
Yeah, and it's great. And you guys are going to help me. Like, I'm in the course. I'm in Dan Bilzerian. Like, I just want you to consider this. Go back 10 years. Dan Bilzerian is going to teach a dating course. This guy's been with thousands of women, and I'm going to be in the course. Like, are you kidding me? Like I couldn't pay for that. I couldn't pay for that. That's incredible. And like, so I try to do all this for Dan, and Dan has done this thing for me, which has been huge. Also, to be fair, Dan was my 10th episode of my podcast, and it blew up after that. Wow. Right. So being able to help one another. So what I say, the best way to network is, number one, do as much as you can for other people and ask for nothing in return. That's straight from Dan Fleischman. And then the other thing I would tell you is always be in the position of solving problems for other people. Now, the thing is, most of my friends are actually female. Like, you've seen all the shows that I do. Half my guests on my podcast are female, and I teach a course on like how to get men around like extremely beautiful women. So when I'm around beautiful women, they do not care about me. When I'm around a bunch of beautiful women, they do not care about me solving problems for them. They just want me to listen. And I'll straight up say it to them and be like, am I solving your problem right now? Or is this a rhetorical question where I need to sit there? And I'd tell my girlfriend the same thing. And so what I'll tell you guys.
Do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to help?
Do you want me to help? Right. I think the more experience you get, the more ways you can help, the better read you are. I also highly recommend listening to podcasts at like 1.5 speed, 1.7 speed, or listen to audiobooks.
Increase your comprehension.
Yes. I think
you think in 1.5 speed.
Oh, I mean, I know I talk too fast.
Started at like 1.2, 1.3. Now we're at 1.75.
I know I talk too fast because of the way I listen to audiobooks. But I will tell you, if I had to listen to audiobooks at 1.0, I would get bored. So because you listen to them faster, now you get through them faster. You can comprehend ideas faster. People are like, no, there goes too fast. You're not going to be able to comprehend it. And I'm like, that's a weakness in your game. If you ever played someone at speed chess and then you make them play regular chess, they're actually worse. They actually get worse because they need to comprehend at that speed. Like if you were to put Usain Bolt, right, fastest man in the world, 100 meters. If you had to put him in a walking contest with other people, like I'm not prepared to walk this slow. I need to go faster. He needs to go faster. Yeah. Some people it's like a stallion. The stallion needs to run. Some people have a mind where I need the information faster for me to be efficient and for me to continue to pay attention. If you go too slow, I can't listen.
Okay, so back to the building social circles. So you're connected with, it's not that you're necessarily only connected with some incredible celebrities and power players, true power brokers, but you are actually connected with the super connectors.
Yes.
The Dan Fleischmans, the Ty Lopez's. So again, I want to double click on that. Like, what can the everyday person start doing tomorrow that's going to help them level up those connections and maybe also shed the low level connections?
So I'm going to say something that's going to be very counter to what you expect. The first thing you need to do is fix your Instagram. It really is. Like, no matter what, Jonathan, no matter what happens, no matter who you connect with, the first thing they did was look at your Instagram, maybe your LinkedIn. Okay. That's what they did. Yeah. Then if you have a ton of engagement on Instagram, they wanted to check and see if it was legit. So they would check your YouTube. That's what happened. Having those. And by the way, I don't mean you need to have hundreds of thousands of followers, but do you create good content on these different platforms? If you really want to network with the highest level of people, that is who you're going to have to network with. If you even look at Elon Musk right now, he goes on people's shows who have quality content for him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like Max.
For sure. As much as you want to believe that the world is a meritocracy, it really isn't. It actually is a popularity contest. He goes, I'm sure, he is friends with Lex Fridman, but the reason why they're friends is because Lex Fridman has an incredible podcast.
Incredibly popular.
Yeah. And he's incredibly popular.
5 million plus subs, right?
Exactly. And Lex Fridman, yes, while he does have a PhD in robotics and is amazing, and Andrew Huberman has a PhD in like neurobiology, which is amazing. The reality of the situation, he goes on his podcast because they're popular. So if you want to know the greatest way to do this, you're not going to be as popular as Lex Fridman. But can you get a few thousand subs on YouTube because you're consistently posting and creating content? And can you at least have an Instagram that doesn't make you look totally irrelevant? You're relevant, at least in the way you're dressed. You're not overweight.
Yeah. So how can you pass the shit test on Instagram?
I would copy. Instagram's the easiest one because you can literally copy what other people do. There's certain types of photos you can take. Some guys, if they want to do better with women, they can post pre-selection photos which show that other women like them, or they may be able to show access to scarce resources. You're at a place where you're not. I love to say you're at a place you're not supposed to be. I'm not at the 10X conference. I'm backstage with Grant Cardone. I'm not supposed to be here. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm driving up to, we're going to do an interview and I'm in Wes Watson's, Bugatti. I'm not supposed to be. I'm a nobody. I'm not supposed to be here. That's the way I would look at it. So again, fix your Instagram is the first thing. Second thing, I would tell guys to have a list of people. So let's say you don't have a podcast. If you theoretically had a podcast, who are the 200 people you would want on your podcast? Okay. Some of them are going to be unrealistic. I'm probably not going to get Joe Rogan on my podcast. I may be able to get Dana White because the UFC headquarters is right next to my studio. I might be able to get Dana White. Probably not going to get Joe Rogan. I'm probably not going to get Andrew Huberman. I maybe get Chris Williamson. I don't know. Might be able to get Tom Bilyeu.
Dan just went on with them.
Yeah, no, I know.
Dude. With Tom's team on Monday, by the way.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I'd love to have Tom Bilyeu. Yeah, he's awesome. Maybe I'll get him. Maybe not get him. Maybe get Lewis Howes. Andy Frisella. We don't know. But the thing is, let's have that list of people that I want to network with, and then let's build towards that list. Here's the thing that I do a lot of times. If I want a guest on, I'll surround that guest, meaning I'll have like connecting nodes, other people I know he's friends with come on there. And so like I've sent a message to Chris Williamson before, and when I sent it, it showed him 6 other people he's interviewed that have been on my podcast. It's like, hey, Chris, I do a podcast on evolutionary studies. I'd love to have you on my show. He hasn't read it, obviously, but if he did, I think it would be more impressive than what most people ask him, which is, hey, Chris, can you come on my show? He sees that I've had Dr. David Buss on my show. Then he's had Dr. Buss on there. I think that would be enough of a correlation that maybe I'd have a shot. Like that's the thing I would say. If you want to network with people, it's like finding these cross references, someone to introduce you to someone to introduce you to someone. I'm trying to get Dan Fleischman connected me to Dan Martell, and I'm trying to get Dan Martell to come on my show. Like something like
Perfect,
that.
Yeah, and you just read the book.
Exactly. I just read the book. So that would be it. And then going back to the first 2 things I said, do things for people as much as you can and ask for nothing in return. And then get into the habit of always solving people's problems. You fix your social media. You have your list. You sit there and you do as much as you can for other people. That includes charity events. Dan Fleischman has Model Citizen Fund. I go host it as the MC every year and I never ask him for a penny. And then lastly, like I said, always be solving problems for other people.
Yeah. I think it's just, I love that you just call shit out that people might feel like is weird. Like, go fix your Instagram to do better in business. It almost sounds like you're being petty, but it's like, if we're being honest, you looked at my shit before you came here.
The world is petty. We are hairless murder apes. You are constantly judging the value of people that you deal with. We know this to be the case when women look at men. All men, we know that women look at us all based on our status. We've known this since we were children. We don't recognize sometimes that men look at other men all based on the same value. And the more occupied, I don't know what the word is, maybe the more successful we become, the more finite our time becomes and the fewer slots we have for friends. And so what happens is those friends that we do have need to have some level of benefit or productivity for us in our lives.
Some contribution, right?
Some contribution. Because the problem is, it's not that I'm shallow. It's that, number one, the world is shallow, but it's that I only have so many spots. Often I'll have clients come in town.
Another great hard truth, right?
Yes, it is. Often I'll have clients come in town. Please don't take any offense to this because I know people watching this. It's going to be you I'm talking to about. They hit me up and they're like, hey man, I'm in town tomorrow. Can we go meet up and have coffee? And I'm like, bro, there's people sending me death threats. There's a bunch of guys trying to steal my girlfriend. Are you I've got videos people are making hit pieces on me and I have to Tristan, I got to go make 55 reaction videos this week and you want me to go meet you for coffee? No offense, bro. I have a group call I do on Tuesdays that you can join and I will answer your questions for 3 hours. But what they're legitimately think that I have time to go have coffee with them. And the same thing with Owen. Owen talks about this. Owen Cook talks about this all the time. It's these guys will stop. He's I've been coaching for 10 hours. I need to take a piss. And while I'm in the urinal, the guy's coming up to me saying, hey man, I have a quick question. I'm I'm peeing. I'm a fucking human being. And they don't grasp that concept. So what does that mean? Is as you go up the scale, your time becomes more and more finite. And then in the case with say Dan, he has this freedom where Bill Zarian, he only does shit he wants to do. Right. That's when he talks about money equals freedom, Dan does not suffer fools. He only does shit he wants to do with people he wants to do it with. He only wants to go to fun places and do fun things that he enjoys doing. He enjoys coaching, which is something he's discovered recently. So that's why he wants to do. He suffers no fools. I still have to do shit I don't want to do. Dan rarely has to do, and that's really great. Fleischman is very successful. Ty Lopez you notice the same thing with Ty. Like Ty will wake up, he'll go sit in his studio, everything's set up. He sits down, everything's ready to go. He's got a schedule. He's got Maya and Itzel that are sitting there running his schedule, keeping him on top. That's the way to do it, right? That's systems. He's got systems in place to make his life more efficient. And when I see that, that's awesome. I don't sit there and go, "Hey, Ty, do you want to go down to, do you want to go get a coffee or go have some drink?"
When
I go see Ty, it's not because Ty is genuinely my friend. It's just when I go see Ty, let's help Ty make money. Let's learn something from Ty.
Another great truth that I think like guys just don't fucking grasp is like, why do you think it's weird that people are looking out for their own interests?
Well, of course.
And why can't you accept that and make that a part of your understanding and how you interact with them?
You're also looking out for your own interests because you want to be friends with Ty. You're looking out for your own interests because you want to bogart his time or Dan Bilzerian's time or my time or Owen Cook's time or whoever. You're looking out for your own interests there. And my whole thing is like, I remember the first time I met Owen Cook, it's like at this point, this is the heyday of real social dynamics. It's the biggest pickup company in the world. And I wanted to impress Owen Cook. So you know what I did? I went up and talked to him. I saw the prettiest girl there and I fucking left with her right in front of him. And he was like, "Who the fuck is that guy?" And then we became friends afterwards. That's what I did. And that's, because I was like, I'm not going to come at you like everyone else does. And then then the next thing I did was, because we were in Vegas, this is probably 2013. We're at Surrender in Vegas. And I told Owen, I was like, "I know you have a boot camp, right?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll get all your guys in any night you want for free, any club you want." And he's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And then we became friends because my whole thing is like, "Owen, I'm going to solve problems for you." And then we're going to become friends. And we've genuinely become friends because of that.
And think about from his perspective, I'm like, I got this group of guys. I'm trying to get them out to cool places. He just offered me 20 comps. Mm-hmm. Like, who gets 20 guys into a fucking club?
Bro,
definitely not in Vegas.
No, it's definitely crazy. But yeah, that's the thing. Like so it's the language of solving problems is how you do that. That is the key to doing all and being able to promote different stuff. My favorite sport in the world is slam ball. I know, super weird. The fucking thing with the trampolines where they go dunk on each other. It is so. I take girls with me. I usually go. So the guy who runs Slam Ball, and their marketing director, I know him. And I said, "Hey, is it cool if I bring like 12 girls with me every time I come?" So he goes, "Yeah." He was confused. It's like, "Yeah, if you want to." So I would show up to Slam Ball and I'd have 4 to 12 girls with me every game. And I'd show up and the girls were like, "Holy fucking shit." Because it's the most in person. Slam Ball is the most exciting sport in the world. I will say that again. In person, slam ball is the most exciting. There's violent collisions of guys 30 feet in the air, one guy trying to dunk on each other, and he's got a helmet on. It is the wildest shit you've ever seen in your life. Anyway, I would go there and I would hit them up and I'd be like, "Hey, can I come?" And they were like, at first they didn't understand. And then I started posting everything. All these girls were just tagging slam ball, all this kind of stuff. And then they just offered me free tickets to like everything they do afterwards. And but why? Because I'm offering value to someone. I want to get to know these guys. This was some of the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life. And then you saw Marshawn Lynch. He was like it was Marshawn Lynch and Des Bryant. They were the announcers for Slam Ball. Shit was hilarious, bro. It was so good. But like, that's the kind of thing. As soon as I saw that, I was like, I want to help you guys. How can I help you to do stuff better? Jason Strauss runs Tao Hakkasan. Whenever Jason Strauss tries to promote something, like when Cathedral opened the new restaurant, I try to bring a group of people there and try to help him promote it. Dude, could I say, "Hey, Jason, let's go to dinner sometimes and relax"? If Jason wants to do that and he's got time to do it, I'm down to fucking do it. I went to his birthday party.
Yeah, but is he really going to be able to find time?
I want to solve problems for Jason. That's really what I want to do. And in doing that, you know what I get invited to? Everything. I get invited to everything. That's the truth. I'm not trying to brag. I get invited to everything.
There's one other thing I want to call out, which is like showing up with a group of hot girls.
Yes.
And another weird truth that guys just can't seem to comprehend. So it's like, why not? Even if you show up with average girls, why don't you just show up with a bunch of chicks? Everybody fucking loves you when you show up with a bunch of girls, especially if they're hot.
It's so funny. I got to find this photograph. It's me and Alyssa Sawaya and 4 other girls. We went to a Ty Lopez speech, and it was so.
Could be the most boring, lame ass business event. Show up with a bunch of hot girls.
I walked in, and I had these 4 super hot girls with me. When Ty Lopez was speaking, and I remember the whole room getting silent.
Yeah, I can just imagine everyone just went.
It was so funny, dude. And they all wanted to meet Ty. They were friends with Ty, and I'm like, Dude, do you know how many girls out there that like thought they were going to start a social media management agency that were strippers, and you could have just asked all of them to come with you to see Ty Lopez for free? They would have all said yes. You could have showed up to a Ty Lopez event with 25 girls if you had just put in a little bit of fucking effort. And if you did, everyone in there would have been like, who the fuck is that guy? And they would have said, but besides you coming up like, hi, here's my card. I do,
can we grab a coffee?
Can we get some coffee? I do some copywriting. You want to hang out? Meanwhile, I'm coming up like, oh, what up, homie? And like, I got to meet this girl, meet this. And it was like, how do you guys not understand it? Like, first off, these self-help conferences are boring as shit because it's nothing but dudes. So have women show up. That's one thing the crypto guys got right. The crypto guys would at least bring girls. Dan Fleischman, his birthday party is like fucking 200 girls and 25 guys.
Yeah, 10 to 1 ratio.
Yeah, it's crazy. At least they would get that part right. Dan understands that. Dan Bilzerian understands that. Dan Fleischman understands that. I don't know. And Adam Sosnick understands this concept. But yes, if you're the guy who shows up to the networking event, but you have 4 girls with you, everyone wants to know who you are, and other women are curious about you, and that curiosity leads to attraction. I don't know how people don't grasp this concept.
And attraction from guys in a non-sexual way. It's like, these dudes are going to gravitate toward me because they know I'm a power player, right? Even being a married man and having my wife show up with her friends, I'm like, I will take it.
Yeah,
because it just automatically puts you in the driver's seat as a guy.
It's amazing. It's really, there's one of the things I like to do is, so I've hosted, this will be 60 or 61, my bikini competition I've hosted on Friday. No, I'm sorry. 60 will be tomorrow. 61 will be.
How are you not fucking tired?
Huh?
I'm not tired, dude.
The Celsius I'm drinking. 61 will be on Friday in Vegas. And when I'm there, one of the things I do is like when they ask me to host it, I say, can I pick the judges or some of the judges? Can I have some celebrity show up? And so I've had Justin Waller come be a judge. Rollo Tomasi's been a judge. I'm going to see if I can get Casey Zander to be a judge on Friday. So I want them to do it and they just have a good time. It doesn't matter if they're a judge or not. It's not a big deal, but I use, I've had lawyers, doctors come out, they're judges and plastic surgeons, whatever. And I'll take these events that I have and I invite these really high standing guys, super successful guys. And I'll be like, come out, have a good time. They can be a judge or not a judge, but I use these social events and then I invite them and ask them for nothing. I don't even ask them to post.
Instead, just show them an awesome time.
Just show them an awesome time. You just do that over and over again and you get invited to everything. That's the key. That's the trick.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that sticks out, and I don't know if you're cool with it, but I like fucking love going deeper on this like social concept because you understand it so well. The concept of pushing versus pulling. You're talking about creating a network around, okay, let's just say I'm targeting this person I want to connect with.
Yeah.
You become friends with all the people around them and let them start talking about how fucking awesome Michael Sartain is. And then by nature, the target contact is going to find out about you. So talk to me about pull versus push.
Someday if I'm ever friends with him, I'm going to show him this episode. I've always wanted to go on Chris Williamson's podcast. The guy lives in Austin. I'm from Austin. He's friends with Dan Bilzerian. He's into evolutionary studies. I really think we'd have the best interview ever. But because I'm on the red pill side of things, I don't think he wants me on his show. And my whole thing is
I can't let this guy talk on my show.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I really do feel like if I come on there, I'm going to make too much sense. And by the way, I'm not very red pill compared to like Rollo, but I am somewhat red pill. And I would love to, and I have nothing but respect for the guy, and I would love to discuss certain concepts with him, and also his friends Mac and Murphy, William Costello, Alex Datesyke. I actually watch their content a lot too, even though those guys don't like Rollo. And so I would love to do a show with him. But the thing is, I feel like I don't take any of it personally, but I feel like I got to get so big he can't ignore me. Do you understand?
Yeah. So talk me through your strategy. How are you going to get him to come to you?
Oh, I would like, I'm going to have William Costello, Mac and Murphy, Alex Datesyke, Dr. Buss. I'm going to have them all on my show and then have all of, like you said before. Do you remember the Romans took a massive L back in the day from General Hannibal? Do you remember this? Carthaginian general named Hannibal. He came over the Swiss Alps with elephants. And do you remember how he beat the Romans? He beat the Romans because he fucking surrounded them.
Yeah, didn't he put a gate or like a fence around them?
Yeah.
Like built a wall around them. That's what he did.
He surrounded them. And my guys are like, how do you get people on your podcast? He's like, you do the same thing that Hannibal did at the Battle of Cannae. You surround them motherfuckers. So it's exactly the same thing. It's how my girlfriend, there were 4 girls bragging to my girlfriend about me when we first met. You're exactly right. I would use social proof to try to surround him, and then eventually, hopefully say, okay, hey man, I'd love to have you on the show. And then when he comes on the show, it's going to be very similar to when Bilzerian went on PBD. And I don't think Patrick was ready for how smart Dan was. I do think is like if I ever went on Chris Williamson's show, I would spend probably somewhere in the order of 30 to 40 hours going over specific studies in evolutionary psychology that I could quote and source, so that when I made an argument, he would not get caught slipping at all. Does that make sense? And we could come to some understanding from there. But there would not be a sloppy interview. It would be very, very concise understanding of like where there's a little bit of a difference between what he believes and what I believe.
Yeah, and I was emailing with Chris's team this morning. Yeah. So I feel like you've already created that magnetism. That's something that you haven't used that word, but I think you've definitely mastered the concept of magnetism, because now you're starting those conversations, and maybe we can get into the more foo-foo side of the conversation, but you've created this energy that's going to pull that to you. Yeah. And if you don't land in the moon, you're going to land in the stars, right? Because you've just connected with a bunch of people who are friends with Chris Williamson. Yeah. So by nature, you're going to get some good.
Whatever.
Unless you're going to shill for him.
Yeah. Well, by the way,
we'll put a link in bio.
I'm a good sell, bro. Say no.
Yeah, she feels stupid saying no.
It feels.
Yeah, you guys are crushing.
Yeah, and so thousands.
Because if you win, they're going to end up eating out of your palms instead of vice versa.
We can speculate. Maybe I never do an interview with him. Maybe Lewis Howes doesn't give a shit who I am. Maybe Tom Bilyeu never wants anything to do with anything even remotely moderate, conservative, right wing, whatever. Maybe that's where we are. I don't know. Well, my point is, I just need to worry about me doing better, and then and I'm saying this for the benefit of everyone who's watching. You're going to do awesome. And then it's like the guy who's really unhappy is not the guy who makes 50 grand, who lives in a household, who lives in a neighborhood with guys who make 70 grand. The guy who's miserable is the one who makes 10 million a year, who lives in a neighborhood with billionaires. That guy is way more miserable, and there's no reason to be miserable. 10%. Yeah, dude. If you this is how crazy in the United States, you know how privileged you are. You live in the United States. The top 1% of wage earners in the United States is $819,000 a year, I believe. The top 1% of wage earners on planet Earth is $32,000 a year.
1%er, baby, right here.
1% on Earth is 32. What? Are you kidding me? Dude, if you, top 10%, top 10%, I believe is $134,000 a year. And the top 10% of wage earners, if your average wage earner in the United States, I think it's $59,000 a year, but you're the top 1% on planet Earth at $32,000 a year. Right. You know how much you understand how grateful you should be for the fact that you're just in North America at all, or even Britain, Canada, Australia, even one of those accompanying countries, that you're so lucky if you're in one of those situations, and you just have to have some gratitude for it. So while the reason why I bring this up is while you're networking, while you're building your network, you're going to see a bigger network and you're not included. And you might feel some kind of way about it. And my whole thing is don't worry about it.
Truth.
Yeah, just don't worry about it. There's always gonna be more status that you want, like on your journey. When I looked at it, and I was like, I remember when we crossed like $10 million in revenue. I remember thinking to myself, like I totally didn't notice this. I'm only concerned about making the podcast better. And like we hit this growth number, and No one told me, and we didn't give a fuck because all I cared about was like doing better. And when someday, 20 years from now, somebody will be like, hey man, when you guys hit that number, what was that like? And I'm like, bro, I don't even remember, because I didn't take any time to have any gratitude for the fact that we made this work. Instead, what I did was, all I was concerned about is, man, I can't get Chris Williamson on my show. You see what I'm saying? So you have to sit there and take an opportunity to show some gratitude for what it is that you've been doing.
Yeah, this is where I want to shift gears a little bit. There's one more topic I want to talk about. Let's make it quick. So we got the concept of building and closing the target, right?
Yes.
Now there's another concept, which is how I met my wife, which is making friends with a bunch of hot girls.
Yes.
They could even be average girls, and don't hook up with them.
Yeah.
Let them introduce their friends, because their friends are going to come in and out of the circle group. The friends group, but like if you are, going to the group, you're going to get incestual, right? Like you're going to cause problems, and the group's going to break up. So talk to me about like what me and my brother actually back in college called it the pivot.
Yeah. Yeah, so that actually the word pivot comes from mystery. He mystery method.
Read mystery.
Yeah, Eric's a buddy of mine. So I didn't know you were going to ask me about this. This is great. This is actually probably the core difference I have with those, say, red pill and pickup community, is that men and women can and should be friends, but you need to put women in the friend zone, like what you said before. By the way, the only difference is this: if you're friends with 20 women, you don't hit on them. That doesn't mean you don't sleep with them. Often you will end up sleeping with them, because they're competing for your attention, and you will do nothing and they will try to sleep with you. That's why I love Dan's course, Sigma Society course, is because he teaches that concept that I just explained, that 99% of men will never experience, because you've never had one woman fighting for your attention, let alone 10. But if you have 10 female friends who aren't attracted to you, when they see the other 9, they're just like, who the fuck is this guy? What's he got going on here? Why are all these, what's more compliance? And then the craziest thing is, I remember I went to my birthday. Dan came to my 44th birthday. This is back 2021. And we were at Omnia, and I brought 50 something girls to Omnia. And I told, this is the way it works.
Just keeps getting bigger.
By the way, this is the way it works. Okay. By the way, I got photos if any of you think I'm bullshitting. And I walk in with 54 girls, and I tell the guys, I'm like, the girls and I are going to walk in at 11. You guys cannot walk in until 12:30, because I need to take photos of just the girls initially. And Noah Tepperberg and Jason Strauss had the table next to ours, and I wanted to make a really good impression on them, and I wanted to give them an awesome Tuesday night table for an industry night. We were just getting out of COVID. I wanted to like help them out and go do that. When I did that, do you know how many other girls that weren't at my table came to my table because they wanted to know why one dude had 54 girls with him? It was so many girls. And then Steve Aoki walks by, and then Dan Bilzerian shows up with 5 more girls, and he sits there and hangs out with me the whole night for my birthday. Dan. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Well, I mean, yeah, Dan has some gorgeous women there, but I just remember that night and just being like, it's like, if you are, we call it in MOA, we call it status poverty. If you're above status poverty, have you ever read Hustle Harder by 50 Cent? He said,
his books are so good.
So good. He said, when I had no money, no one wanted to loan him money. You remember that? He goes, once I had $1 million in the bank, I go to another bank, they want to loan me $3 million. I take that $3 million, I go to another bank, they want to loan me $20 million. Mm-hmm. When you have stuff, it goes, Casey Zander says, hungry mouths never get fed. Bilzerian talks about this. When you want something, nobody wants to give it to you. It was that type of situation. When you get on the other side of status poverty, when you're above the status poverty line, everyone wants to date you. Everyone wants to work with you. Everyone wants to be your client. It's so wild.
And you don't even care. You don't even really want it.
Can you imagine? Like, Alex Hormozi doesn't need to run ads anymore. Like, he's so famous now. He doesn't have, Brad Lee doesn't, like, these guys, they don't have to do shit. Wes Watson, you can hate on him all you want. Wes Watson is doing $3-4 million a month in revenue with 90% profit, and he doesn't even have a fucking sales team. Like, bro, he's so, like, when you get to that, the other end of status poverty, the other end, it's like all of the wealth, all of the status just flocks to you. You understand what I'm saying? It's like you go to a party, there's 10, like, I used to joke with my guy friends, if you ever go to a party with Dan Bilzerian and like there's 10 guys and 10 girls, it's not one guy per girl. It's 10 girls for Dan, and you guys need to go fucking play poker together because they ain't gonna pay no attention to you. It's like that. It's like there's this few group of guys that are just getting so much attention from women, and it's the same thing in business. There's these few businesses that are just like crushing it because they understand these concepts. I'll tell you, my number one concept is I am not so arrogant as to not listen to someone else who's more successful than me. I am always open to the fact. I'm always open to the idea that I've got everything wrong. And someone can come to me and be like, bro, you screwed this up. Whether it's Taylor Welsh or Cole Gordon or Jeremy Minor, any of these guys can come to me and say, bro, you got this wrong. You should do this instead. If it's Nick Daniels or Kevin Pern or fucking Brandon McElroy or Weston Corica, bro, you fucked this up. You need to do this. If any of those guys come to me or Ty Lopez, I would change it immediately. I don't need to be right. I want to win I don't want to win the argument. I just want to win. And doing that, I think that has been magnificently successful for us as far as our growth is concerned. So this first course is about networking. Later on, we're going to do like a lower ticket course for other people, conquering limiting beliefs. Down the road, again, this is just an idea. I'm speaking this into an existence because I'm trying to arm twist my business partners in this. We're going to do a course explaining how we built our course. Do you remember Evan Pagan, David D'Angelo, way back in the day?
Yeah, way back. Oh, geez.
Yeah. So David D'Angelo comes out with a product called Double Your Dating, and then he gets rid of his pseudonym, David D'Angelo. His real name's Evan Pagan, and he releases another program called Get Elevated, where he teaches you how he built Double Your Dating, and he explains to people how to use the squeeze page. He's the father of the squeeze page. He invented that. I think we want to do that at some point in the future, because when I did this, I wasn't famous. I had nothing to fall back on. Even with like, Chris Williamson, he was on a reality TV show before he started his podcast. I was nobody, and I was able to build this up to a certain point. I want to teach other people how to start from nowhere and then build it up. That would be the next course I'd want to build, because then we can provide even more value for people.
Yeah, it's such an incredible contribution, because it's like all these truths that guys don't want to accept. You're just dispelling all of that myth, if you will, and showing them how to get results. I don't know. I really like it.
How about the other one? Giving attribution to other people for their ideas. Okay, I'll give you an example. I don't mean to.
This is all revolving around the killing of the ego.
It's exactly right. I don't mean to throw shade, but if you guys have been to the Landmark Forum, it's really funny. If you go to Landmark Forum, basically,
my wife went.
Yeah, just read The Power of Now. You'll get. Spoiler alert: you'll get everything in the Landmark Forum. Okay, just read The Power of Now. Read the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and then read *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. Literally everything in the Landmark Forum is from those. But if you go there, when they say the only way to enrollment is through the forum, they give no credit to anyone else for any ideas. The truth can only be handled through the forum. That's the only way. And then I watched Ty Lopez. I had a guy come to me one time, and he goes, I don't like Ty's business model because he's constantly giving attribution to other authors and other people for their ideas. And I was like, I think you might be wrong about this. I think that might be the way to do it. I am a signpost. I am not your messiah. I am not your guru. I am a signpost that directs you to other people who are smarter than me for individual different things. I will tell you right now, I understood concepts of pre-selection, but did not know them until I saw Dan Bilzerian do it. I understood concepts in networking, but did not fully know them until I saw Dan Fleischman, who, every girl he dates is a fucking 10. The guy's got a fucking ranch in Temecula with hundreds of animals. The guy's loaded. I did not fully understand. I understood building a lifestyle that people wanted, but I did not fully understand that, grasp that, until I became friends with Wes Watson. Wes Watson he told me one time, he goes, you're not selling a product, you're selling your life. You need the person who buys your product is like, would I trade places with you? Right? That's what Wes Watson's doing, right? I did not fully understand these concepts until I actually saw these people, and I fully credit them in every part of my course for inspiring me to do certain things. And if somebody hears that and buys their course too, I do not consider them competition. I consider them brothers. I have no issue with someone taking my course, find out, because by the way, if you take my course, you're required to read 30 books. There's 30 books in the book list. There's a few optional ones, but there's 30 you have to read. I have no problem whatsoever at attributing status and praise on them. I give total praise to this whole interview. I've been giving praise to a bunch of people. I have no issue giving praise to those other people. And I see other people, and they have a huge problem with this idea. They want to make it like the only way, like some fitness coach is like, he invented macros. Really? You invented counting macros, bro? Is that crazy? You invented CrossFit. Shut the fuck up. That high intensity training, that was you. You created that. Is that the truth? I always attribute other people. And I think part of that,
number one fitness coach.
Yeah, I think I get that concept of the idea of, because I studied astronomy and physics, is Albert Einstein standing on the shoulders of James Clerk Maxwell. Albert Einstein actually won the Nobel Prize in 1921 for the photoelectric effect, not for relativity. The James Clerk Maxwell standing on the shoulders of Michael Faraday standing on the shoulders of Isaac Newton standing on the shoulders of Johannes Kepler. Like when you consider that, each one of them gave attribution to the people who helped them. And then, Schrodinger, Oppenheimer, those people, Schwarzschild, them giving credit to Einstein and Newton and all those other people. They stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think that's one other thing that we have to do. Whenever I hear people like shitting on Mystery or shitting on Rollo Tomassi, it's like, those guys are old. They don't know what they're talking about. The idea that we would even be having these conversations like we're having now without Joe Rogan, for instance, like Joe Rogan, he's too old. And no, this exists. Joe Rogan created the space. Intersexual dynamic conversations was created by Mystery and Rollo. I don't care what you say. I don't care who you are. There are people out there making millions of dollars giving dating advice that are talking shit about Rollo when they really wouldn't even have a channel. This whole concept of all of us coming together and having these discussions literally came from the red pill community and the pickup community. You can lie to yourself all you want and tell yourself that's not true, but the ethos of this discussion came from those places, because academia sure as fuck wasn't having this conversation. They weren't. Academia refused to have this conversation that men at the bottom were getting no sex. They refused to have that conversation. Richard Reeves decided to have the conversation, but nobody else. Scott Galloway, he has this conversation now, but prior to them, no one was having this conversation. And if you imagine, John, if you had a course right now at USC called Why Men Suffer, you would have motherfuckers throwing apples and bananas at you coming out of the lecture room. Men don't suffer. Like you can't do that. So having a course where you describe, well, the number one victims of violent crime are men. The most likely to be homeless are men. Most likely to take their own life are men. If you were to have a course like that, people would be like, no, you can't teach this stuff. You can't do this. No one is allowed to talk about men suffering. And because no one talked about men suffering, there was a vacuum. And then Andrew Tate filled that vacuum. And that's the whole damn thing. And that's why he became the most famous person in the world, because it was this huge, physics, nature abhors a vacuum. There was a vacuum there. There were men suffering and no one acknowledging they were suffering. And then he came in, rightly or wrongly. You agree with him or don't agree with him. Men were suffering and no one acknowledged they existed because they were too short or too poor or too low status. And no one acknowledged they existed. And then one guy comes along and he acknowledges them. Even if you don't believe him, he acknowledged them. And because of that, in August of 2022 or 3, he was the most famous person in the entire world. Most Googled person on earth.
So with that, let's talk about this ego stuff. So I know that you have, I didn't expect you to have any spiritual backdrop just because I never knew that about you. But when I was reading, I saw that you're into astronomy. And if you're into astronomy, you have typically you have some kind of spirituality. So are you spiritual?
My belief, it's called the God of Spinoza, is what Albert Einstein kind of believed in, which is the idea that there is a creator, but the creator he created a Higgs field and then the 4 fundamental forces of the universe, which eventually led to the coagulation of matter, which then led to stars and then planets, which then led to, amino acids forming life, replicating, natural selection, single cell life forms for 3 billion years on this planet, then eventually amphibians, reptiles, vertebrates, mammals, etc. Like, I believe that those things were put into motion by a creator. Yes. And I do not believe in a literal interpretation of the Old Testament.
Yes. Touche. By the way, I think there's, at least in my mind, there's a big distinction between religion and spirituality, because religion is an organized man thing and spirituality is your practice with creator, right? So do you believe that humans can tap into divine intelligence through their spiritual practice? So
if you called it divine intelligence and I told you that it's actually your evolutionary programming from the survival characteristics of your ancestors 50,000 years ago, we're kind of talking about the same thing. It's the same result. Is
there a dialogue that happens from the ancestors to the present?
Well, if you or I,
or is it purely evolutionary?
Okay, so let's say you and I were 12 years old and we go hang off the edge of we look over the edge of a balcony. We're both afraid of heights. That's our ancestors left that for us. Our ancestors that were not afraid of heights, who jumped off of bridges, or jumped off of cliffs were no longer our ancestors. They did not replicate. And so our fear of heights, our fear of snakes, our fear of fire, it's passed down evolutionarily. You may say, am I tapping into a spiritual intelligence? I think it's a genetic blockchain that goes all the way back to single cell organisms of what are the things that helped me survive? And those things, you feel them. So when somebody comes up to you, have you ever met someone who's truly autistic, has Asperger's, or someone who's a real psychopath? They're dead in the eyes. You can see it.
Oh, yeah.
They're dead. You can see the deadness in the eyes. Why is that? It's because evolution gave you an adaptation in your reticular activation system to notice something is wrong here. Alarm bells are going off. You guys should read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. Immediately you can tell something is wrong here. Women who are far more socially attuned than men are, those women, they can pick up this dude's weird faster than you can pick up this dude's weird. Unless we're talking about a guy guys who work
faster than the female can comprehend it. She feels it.
Yeah, she feels it before she comprehends it. There's an exception. Men who work the door at nightclubs, they can see it as well. Police officers can see it as well. People who are constantly interfering with dealing with interactions with other men, they can tell. Probably, I would say sales guys can probably do it too. If you do Zoom sales, quickly you can tell this guy's a fucking weirdo very quickly. So what I'm saying is where you're getting those alarm bells, I do think it's an evolutionary thing. Is there a creator? Maybe. What I'm saying is the fact that there's 8 billion humans on the planet, meaning that, so at some point during our history, there were 60,000 humans on Earth, right? There was a few times where humanity was almost wiped out because of disease or weather or starvation. We don't even exactly know why, but we know there were a few places where that happened. All of the genetic code that exists in you existed somewhere in those 60,000 people that were left. So every single thing they did, every proclivity that they had must have aided them in survival. There must have been no wasted motion. They were living hand to mouth. They were living basically everything they ate, they had to kill, and they were on the brink of starvation at all times, at any point, and probably, if they were lucky, lived to be 35, and teeth probably fell out somewhere in their 20s. Okay? They're very lucky to live to a certain age. Babies were being born by children who were 14, 15 years old. Very different existence than what we have today. Every single thing that they did that they pass along. So, for instance, men's jealousy and mate guarding over their wives. If they didn't mate guard, then they were raising someone else's kids. Women feeling jealousy over men when they talk to other women because he was going to take his resources and give it to another woman. Those evolutionary adaptations aided in our survival.
60,000 population.
Correct. Those primitive adaptations, the ones that we had. Here's another one. This is a crazy one. Sexy Sun's hypothesis, promiscuous men. Why would promiscuity be promoted in men? Because promiscuous men are actually more likely to give you children. They actually are
more productive.
They're more exactly from an evolutionary standpoint. I have a buddy of mine. He went to jail for 10 years. He's got kids with 6 different women. This guy was a crack dealer I grew up with in high school. He played fullback. I was a tight end, and we've kept in touch. He's got kids with 6 different women. He went to prison for 10 years for selling crack. He came out, and from an evolutionary standpoint, I have no kids, and he's got 6, and we're both 46 years old. Who wins 300 years from now? His evolutionary, his genes, he won. He trumped me. He's surpassed me. He will have an order of magnitude. Even I have 2 kids now. He will have an order of magnitude more offspring in 300 years than I will. Right. And so that's the whole thing. It's survive long enough to replicate those proclivities that you have as a man. So he's an example of someone who's promiscuous. Those proclivities that you have that aided in survival, when you feel those, you may think it's a spirituality. You may think it's Zen or karma or whatever. What it actually is those are the things that aided in the survival of your offspring. Male over perception bias. You notice when a really pretty girl even smiles at a guy, he thinks it's an invitation for sex. Right? And then women's under perception bias. Women, have you ever talked to a woman? Literally she goes, "Oh, this is my guy friend John." And you're looking at the guy and it's this guy's trying to fuck you. Do you not notice he's trying to fuck you? She's like, "No, he's just like a brother to me." I'm this guy has a hard penis, right? He's trying to fuck you right now. Do you not see that? Women have an under perception bias. And so where does that come from? Again, from evolution. Women, it's way more costly for them to fuck the wrong guy than it is for a man to fuck the wrong woman. And that's where those things come from. So I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is what a lot of it is, though, is just our evolutionary hardwiring that just comes out when we need it.
Yeah, and I guess maybe my question's framed in the wrong way. I don't believe there's a big puppet master who made everybody. I do believe that there's spiritual energy that occupies each of us, and that's the life force. but I actually believe in much more weird, obscure shit. I'm not even going to bring it up now.
Yeah.
I believe in aliens and all kinds of shit. So anyway, what has astronomy taught you about the human existence and spirituality?
I mean, it's just when you come to the realization of like how, there's two things here. The incredible things that had to happen for life to exist on this planet. So there's a couple of things. You had to have a sun that wasn't too bright and didn't burn out too quickly and was just at the right wavelength for light to exist, for life to exist. Because if it's too much ultraviolet radiation and you don't have protection over it, the reason why we can exist on this planet is because of the ozone layer. Ozone, which is O3, it's 3 oxygen atoms together to form a molecule. When it hits ultraviolet light, it breaks apart, and part of the offspring of that is O2, which is what we breathe. If that doesn't happen, then or if we're too close, like we're as close as Mercury, our atmosphere gets burned off. If we're too far as Mars, then it's too cold, and we don't end up developing liquid water on our surface. We just happen to be in this perfect Goldilocks zone for something like this to happen. Also, the planet could have been too big. Imagine something twice the size of Earth. Now, all of a sudden, gravity, instead of 9.81 meters per second squared, it's more than that. It's way more. And now we're all, we're 2 feet tall, right? and like big stout. We look like dwarves, right? Or the planet is smaller and gravity is lighter, and all of us are walking around 8 feet tall with like long limbs, and we can jump like long distance. Who knows how life would have been created on this planet if those little variables had been very different. But then you look around just the galaxy, not the universe, just the galaxy. And you see, okay, it's 100,000 light years to the middle of the galaxy. And we go in there and we see all these stars that are there. And then there's a few stars where there's planets that go around the stars, and the planet crosses face on between us and the star. And we can use what's called spectroscopy, and we can tell, okay, there's methane, oxygen, carbon dioxide on these planets that are crossing. I know this is really hard for some people to grasp. Like, how can you tell from light that there's oxygen? You absolutely can. Just look up the concept. We do it all the time. You guys ever watch CSI? They use spectroscopy in order to tell the remains of like what's in a room. We use spectroscopy all the time in like solving crimes. Of course, we can use it in astronomy as well. And when you do that, you can say, okay, well, there's so many other planets that have methane. Well, there's no natural explanation for methane other than volcanoes. They have a volcanic atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. And like there's certain things, like there's certain combinations of gases that can only be explained through life. And we look at all these other planets and we realize, man, we're talking billions of other planets. There's got to be life on these other planets, right? So even though we were fortunate, there's so many other rolls of the dice with different solar systems that some of them are going to have life as well. The thing is, they're just so far away, we're never going to meet them. Yeah. We're never going to, it's 24 trillion miles, trillion with a T. It's 24 trillion miles to the nearest star. And there's no other stars even around us like that, even that close. 24 trillion miles. And so, yeah, I mean, at 1% the speed of light, it would take you 400 years to get there.
So I'm guessing you believe in other existences or other like aliens, I
believe in aliens. They're just not going to get here. It's just like somebody has.
So you don't believe that they've come to Earth?
I don't believe they come to Earth. I just don't see how. Like there's no way, because the law, one of the things we found is when we study the universe and we have the ability to see other galaxies, is that the laws of physics are uniform. Mathematics and physics work exactly the same in different areas of the universe. We don't look and see massive redshifts or different types of gravity when we look at Andromeda versus when we look in the Milky Way. So if the laws of physics hold constant, then that means light in a vacuum travels at 186,282 miles a second. We don't see that as a variable in different galaxies. So we know light is a constant. We understand the way gravity works. The formula for gravity that Isaac Newton created still works in Andromeda or other galaxies. So if the laws of physics are constant, we also know that is if you accelerate matter to near the speed of light, the mass becomes infinite. Take my word on this or look up a YouTube video. It's true. So the amount of energy required to accelerate matter to the speed of light would require more energy than exists in all the energy that exists in Andromeda. You would have to burn off every star in the entire galaxy in order to consume enough mass in order to create enough force to get matter to the speed of light. So if that's the case, then that means these other aliens, if they're made of matter, then there's no way for them to get to us.
It's just too far. It's
too far and requires too much energy. And so the idea was like, well, what if they're spiritual? It's like now we're having a metaphysical discussion about things. Like if you're saying they're in another dimension and we can't touch them or see them, that's not science. Whenever you're having discussions about other universes, that's slightly outside the realm of science because there's no testable hypothesis. Does that make sense? So you can.
So do you believe that there's other realms and other dimensions?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, when I listen to Michio Kaku, who knows way more about this than me, he definitely believes in this concept of other dimensions, or the concept of like, if you go back in time, like if you were able to exceed the speed of light and go back in time, you'd go back in time, but not in this time. You go back in a different time. And in that time, you always went back in time. You would go into a different universe. There's all sorts of things, but like, it's so far outside of our not ability to comprehend. We can start to comprehend it, but we can't experiment with it. There is one theory that dark matter and dark energy are basically matter that exists in a like an adjacent universe. Maybe that's the case. I don't know if that's the case, but what I do know is here, according to these laws of physics, there is no way for us. We can't even go 1% the speed of light. We can't even go a fraction of 1% the speed of light now. You would have to go 1% the speed of light to get to Alpha Proxima Centauri in 400 years. That means your great-great-great-great-grandchildren would get there. And you better hope there's a fucking planet to live on. Because if there isn't, you're just going to die. That's the whole thing. So you're telling me there's some species out there that has this faster than light travel ability. They've created some kind of warp drive or a wormhole or something like that. And in doing so, they're like, yeah, let's go to the planet with the hairless murder apes that have nuclear weapons. That's the one we want to visit. No, I promise you, of all the life forms that are on this planet, we're amongst the most boring. We're amongst the most boring, droll, and unintelligent, self-absorbed of any intelligent life that lives in this galaxy. Absolutely, we are. We believe in so much superstition. We make decisions based on nothing but irrational emotion. We look like ants to them. I don't. What I'm saying is there some faster than light civilization that exists somewhere in this galaxy? And it'd be in this galaxy. It's not in the universe. It'd be somewhere in this galaxy. Could it be? It could exist. Yes. I'm just saying we're like the 500th option. 5 millionth option.
Okay, last question about this shit. So who built the pyramids?
I think the Egyptians built the pyramids. It just took a lot of fucking work. This idea that the technology to build the pyramids has disappeared, it's very similar to the technology to build the Saturn V rocket disappeared. No, it didn't disappear.
How did these Egyptians, who are clearly primitive,
yes.
First of all, diamond cut stones that are between 20 and 80
tons.
But
they accurately cut the stones, yeah.
You can't slide a paper between two of the stones.
Yes.
How did they create these perfectly cubic?
There's probably stuff they could have done with like balancing like water. There's different ways that they could have done it. We don't. Is this exact technology on how they made the stones that sharp left to us? No. But the idea that we couldn't do it is a pyramid. Just like we don't have technology to do that today. I'm like, have you been to the Luxor? We can build a fucking pyramid. That is like, we exaggerate the fuck out of this idea. You guys know the technology to go to the moon doesn't exist anymore. I'm like, yes, it does. It's just like this concept, right? Chevy used to make a 1965 Impala. Could they make a 1965 Impala? Yes. Do they make a 1965 Impala? No, they don't make one anymore. It doesn't mean they couldn't. It's the same thing with the Saturn V rocket. It's like, we've made a Falcon Heavy. We're making a rocket that's going to be able to propel us to the moon. And people are like, well, we've lost the technology. No, we didn't lose the technology. We just don't. That's not our expertise anymore. If you took engineers and gave them long enough time, they could recreate the pyramids. If you don't believe that, you are gravely misunderstanding how human intelligence works. What I'm telling you is this. The idea that they didn't have the technology that we had back during 3,000 years ago, during those Egyptian times, correct. They didn't have the technology we have, but did they have the intelligence we have? Yes, they did. Intelligence is heritable. There were some people during that time period who probably had 130, 140 IQs who came up with ways of using pulleys and levers, of being able to construct those things over the course of 400, 500, 600 years that they ended up putting those different structures together. But the idea that we could never figure out how to do this is such a gross exaggeration. No, humans could have built the pyramids. They absolutely could have. What would have taken? A lot of hard work, a ton of hard work. That's what the way it would have worked.
So what about the statues on the Easter Islands? How did those get there?
I mean, probably the same thing. Probably a massive amount of hard work and chiseling of stone. Again, we keep going to this thing because next year you say Stonehenge. How did we move those rocks 400? Yeah, what were these people? You know what the difference was? These motherfuckers didn't have iPhones. They actually could focus on a thing and then do the thing. The people who probably rolled those stones to put them in those places, the probably original rolling of the stones was their grandchildren who started doing, or their grandparents, and then their parents, and then finally they did. And their whole life was centered around, very similar to like if you go to some college, their whole life is based around supporting that college. Or there's people who believe in like the Easter Bunny, or people who believe in fucking what's it called, the St. Patrick, right? You understand? We carry the tradition of a man who played a flute in Ireland to chase all the snakes off of Ireland. Do you want to know what anthropologists tell us? There were never any fucking snakes on Ireland. We still believe in this hundreds of years later. You don't believe that you could have taken a group of people and told them, hey, listen, God will bless you if you roll these stones 50 miles this way. And that is your whole life purpose. Then you die and your children keep rolling them, and you die and your children. That's essentially what happened. People don't like this idea because it's hard, and also because they can't get off their phone for 10 minutes. The idea of focusing on an idea for an entire lifetime is so outside of their reality. But you don't realize life was incredibly hard during that time period. And if you had some level of like sustenance or some purpose, and your purpose was to build Stonehenge, and it just took like 5-6 generations.
It's a noble existence.
It's a noble existence for you because you've been taught through passing. And when we talk about stories, someone told stories to those people to convince them that the noblest thing in the world for them to do was to sacrifice their entire life to build the pyramids, to build Stonehenge, or to create those things on Easter Island. But the idea that it was aliens is such a fucking cop out. It's so ridiculous. Like, there's so many complex things that we've created on this planet. The idea that the aliens came here to carve stone. Really? That's what you think aliens did? They came here to carve stone. That's what you think that they wanted to leave behind. If aliens came here, trust me, they would have done something way more complicated than that. They would have left us something else. It would be more like Prometheus. They would have like created life or some shit like that. It wouldn't be, let's just create some pyramids right here in northeastern fucking Africa and then do nothing else anywhere else. That doesn't make sense. People just don't see it from that standpoint. And because something is hard, they want to say, because it's hard, it's impossible. It's not impossible. Going to the moon wasn't impossible. It was very, very much done. It wasn't easy, but it was done. There were 600,000 people part of Apollo and Gemini. But when they accomplished it, people were like, this was hard. I couldn't have done this. I can barely pay attention. I can't even function without getting my coffee in the morning. And if I can't do that, there's no way they went to the moon. It's too hard. That's why they didn't go. No, they went to the moon. You know what I'm saying? You want another one? You want to really piss off your audience? Here's another one. Lee Harvey Oswald shot John F. Kennedy by himself. Yes, he did. He had an unobstructed shot at 75 yards. He was a former Marine firing a bolt-action Carcano rifle with completely unobstructed at a target moving 2 miles an hour directly away from him. It was an incredibly easy shot for a Marine. It was not difficult to do, and everything points to the guy operating alone. People are furious right now looking at the camera. There's no way that's true. No, you don't think it's true because it's too hard for you to do it. That's why. This motherfucker was a Marine. You know who else was a Marine? Charles Whitman. You know who he was? Guy who climbed on the tower of University of Texas at Austin and shot 39 people from up there with a bolt-action rifle. But he didn't shoot a president, so none of you ever talk about it. But if a guy shot 39 people with a bolt-action rifle from that range, you think that Oswald couldn't have got 3 shots off at 75 yards? That's nothing. And so that people hear that, they're like, no, that doesn't feel right. No, it's right. Oswald probably was a lunatic who just shot somebody. That's probably what happened. Could there have been other pieces and the CIA left a little cookie crumb here or whatever? No. The idea, he was working at that book depository, and the Secret Service had no idea what the route was beforehand. It was just dumb luck the shit that happened. Dude, how come nobody talks about the fact? I know I'm off on a tie right here, but how about nobody talks about the fact that Gerald Ford, there were 2 assassination attempts against Gerald Ford 11 days apart from each other. No one talks about this. Do you know what I'm talking about? And the courthouse in Sacramento, somebody comes up and the gun misfires. And it was one of the members of the Manson family comes up to shoot Gerald Ford. 11 days later, he's in San Francisco, and a guy comes up and shoots him, misses him, and ends up shooting like a Secret Service agent behind him or something like that. No one ever talks about that. Where's there's tons of attempts on presidents' lives. Where's the conspiracy? Nobody talks about that. It's so funny. Remember the guy who shot Kennedy, shot him in the ribs? You know what I'm talking about? He actually not Kennedy. Reagan. Remember the guy who shot Reagan back in 81, shot him in the ribs? The guy who's trying to impress Jodie Foster? Like, we know you can get to a president, and if you're lucky, you can shoot him and shit can happen. I don't even understand how this motherfucker, Thomas Crooks, shoots Trump from 140 yards away, and you still think Oswald couldn't have shot Kennedy? You really believe that? I'm not saying there wasn't anything nefarious. All I'm telling you, 100% of the time is you took a skilled Marine and you put him up on a 6th floor and had him shoot an unobstructed down and to the left when he's left-handed and said, could you make that shot? Every single Marine is going to tell you, yes, I could. Every one of them is going to tell you he could have made that shot. That's all I'm saying. And people don't like to hear that because, again, because it was hard, you think it's impossible. Stop believing that shit. Because it's hard, you think it's impossible. And then what you do is you fill impossible with conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. Do I think that there are people in the government who hated John F. Kennedy? Fuck yes, there were. There were a lot of people who hated Kennedy. Do I think that those people made Oswald shoot Kennedy? I do not.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, you have a rational mind. That's why I want to understand. Yeah. That's why I asked you about these concepts that are hard to put into words, because I want to see how you tie it together.
Well, I also debate conspiracy theorists. That's like one of my hobbies. The flat earthers are my favorite, but yeah.
Love it. So my last question for you, I like to ask this usually at the end of every show, is what's something that you believe passionately that most other people don't believe?
Yeah, all the things I just told you. We did land on the moon. The Earth is not flat. Kennedy was shot by Oswald. What's the other one? There's another big one that really makes people angry. I can't remember what it was, but there's like a bunch of those. The Holocaust deniers. I debate them. Those are the ones. You'd be surprised how much hate I get just for those 4 views that I have. Unbelievable levels of hate just for those. And there's the part of it, it's just kind of ridiculous. The other ones that I have, the one that I have that it's not super controversial, but I think people are not noticing yet is I think the concept of like exogenous testosterone. You know, like people are going on TRT. There's like 15 million men on TRT right now.
Wow.
I think
crazy number.
I think that people on the left are going to try to make exogenous testosterone illegal.
Yeah.
I think there's too many of us that are in our 40s that are in shape, that have 6-pack abs and hot young girlfriends.
You're scaring the blue hair girls.
Yes, it's scaring. We're too loud and we're too productive and we're too virulent and masculine. And I think they're going to try to stop this.
Did you read Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill?
No, I haven't read that.
Oh my God, fuck. You got to read that.
Okay.
Even if he's religious, so that's his vantage point. But anyway, his whole he had this spiritual experience where he had an interaction with the devil, and the devil told him all the means that he works through, and one of them is through drift. And drift is when he gets people off path, and they eventually, succumb to vices or whatever, bad habits. But the people who pursue good with conviction, determination is like right in line with doing good. Mm-hmm. Right. So men who are extremely determined and have a clear conviction and path, AKA the same energy that you get from TRT and testosterone, just that determination, that grit is like the offset of all the bad in the world. So I don't know. I thought that was an interesting thing. You should read the book.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's definitely really interesting. And just some level of focus.
ICBM, that's the other one. That's the last one.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't think Russia has a single functioning ICBM. I forgot about that. That's another one. People think I'm nuts when I say it. I think Russia.
Anti-conspiracy theorist.
Dude, Russia has the same GDP as Mexico, and you're telling me that they can fucking maintain a nuclear arsenal for 40 years? You go and explain that one to me. I'd love to see you make that one work.
Wow. Yeah. I wish I knew about the topic because I would love to debate that. But all right. So where can guys find out about MOA and your programs?
If you want to level up with networking, if you want to level up with communication, if you want to level up with leadership, and you want to level up with dating, what I want you to be is the guy that everyone meets their girlfriend or boyfriend through. I want you to be the guy everyone finds their employers or employers through. Everyone finds their sponsors through. Everyone gets their book recommendations through. Everyone gets their TV show, restaurant, hotel recommendations through. I want you to be the ultimate connector. If you don't have a life where you can replace your girl, your fucking social circle, and your job in 15 minutes, you don't have enough abundance. And I want to teach you to have that level of abundance. So I recommend you go to school.com, SKOOL.com/men of action free. There's a hyphen in between each word, or you can just go to MOAmentoring.com. It stands for Men of Action, MOAmentoring.com, and you can check out what it is that we got, and you can sign up for a demonstration.
Love it. I'm sold.
All right. Beautiful, man.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, man. Mike. This has been incredible.
Awesome.
See you next time.
Nice, man. Awesome. Good stuff.